Welcome and thank you for joining us today for Applying Generative AI to IT Operations. My name is Raleigh Gould and I'll be moderating today's event. Our featured speaker is Shamus McGillicuddy, Vice President of Research covering Network Management at EMA. Shamus has nearly 2 decades of experience in the IT industry. His research focuses on all aspects of managing enterprise networks, including network automation, AIOps-driven network operations, multi-cloud networking, and WAN transformation. And before I hand things over to Shamus, I wanted the audience to know that Shamus will be concluding his presentation today by taking your questions. Feel free to log them anytime by using the Q&A functionality. Also, today's event is being recorded and you will receive a follow-up email, which will include the on-demand playback as well as additional information about this new research. So I hope you will check that email out. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to our featured speaker, Shamus McGillicuddy. Shamus?
Thank you, Raleigh, and thank you everyone for joining us today. As Raleigh mentioned, I'm the Vice President of Research for EMA. I focus on network infrastructure and operations. For this research, I kind of broadened my lens to IT operations and IT management in general. And as the title suggests, we're looking at how those people, those groups, apply generative artificial intelligence to their jobs. And I want to start off by acknowledging the sponsor of this research. It's independent research, it's not custom research, but NetScout sponsored it, provided financial support for the research, but they did not have input into the actual writing of the report, the data collection. So it is truly independent research, despite the fact that there's just one vendor associated with it. So first off, I want to talk about research goals and methodology. Why did I do this piece of research? First off, about 1.5 years ago, I talked to a lot of network engineers and architects and IT directors and VPs on a regular basis, just about what they're doing with their infrastructure and the tools they use to manage that. And I started hearing about 1.5 years ago a lot of interest in using generative AI just on the job. And back then, it wasn't something that was being delivered by IT vendors for the most part. It was general purpose or consumer tools like ChatGPT, which, you know, as everyone knows, if you're on this webinar, you probably know that it sort of like exploded the whole AI bubble with its going to market. Around that time, that's when people are really starting to grab onto it. And so you see this quote from an infrastructure engineering director at a large manufacturer that I was talking to last year. I was talking to him about AI ops, you know, like using AI ops tools to do things like event correlation and problem isolation and anomaly detection and things like that. And he just started talking to me about how all 12 of the network engineers on his team were paying out of pocket for the premium subscription to ChatGPT, and he was using it himself as well as their boss, because even though he was a director of a network engineering team, he was doing a lot of work on network devices. And here's a quote from him saying, everyone on my team wanted to use ChatGPT 4 and they all paid for it, even if they couldn't get reimbursed. I can give it a paragraph of instructions for it to create a premium configuration that would have taken me a couple of hours to write. It had it all in about 1 minute. Now, naturally, of course, he didn't just like drop that configuration onto a device. You know, he would review it, edit it. But it saved him time sort of getting started and having a framework for how he wanted to do something, whether it was a config or a script that he was going to apply to his orchestration tool, or he'd also he said he was also using it to generate maps and things like that. So, and then not long after that, like half of my briefings and conversations with vendors started to be about how they were leveraging generative AI technology to enhance and differentiate their products. And this is just a collage of various headlines from blogs and press releases that have come out over the last like 6, 12 months from various vendors, promoting what they're doing with generative AI. And you can see it's all over the board, like transform IT service management with generative AI. Implement generative AI for network configuration and management. Your ultimate network management ally. A new era of cloud management. How will generative AI change security operations? The first generative AI IoT security assistant, and how AI-enabled digital twins will transform network management. So naturally, I got curious, like, how can general purpose tools like ChatGPT help IT pros? Because obviously people are doing that. I use it. uh, how can IT vendors deliver value with generative AI? And what challenges do IT pros encounter with AI? So those are the questions that I was interested in exploring with some research. And so we surveyed 151 respondents who had to qualify for the research by demonstrating that their organizations were testing or using generative AI tools, and they themselves had firsthand experience with that, whether it was current use, previous use, or current testing evaluation. So all these people have experience with generative AI. They came from a broad swath of the IT world in terms of like level within an organization. You see engineers, architects, business analysts. You see a lot of middle management and executive level as well. You see the top IT departments. There was the executive suite, obviously, because we've got a lot of CIOs and VPs in there, but also IT service management, cybersecurity, project and program management, IT architecture, network operations, DevOps, app dev. We had a lot of network engineering. We had some SOC people in there from security operations group. Some other groups, I think there might have been some data center operations in there. We had about 12, 15 industries in there. The big bulk of them were from manufacturing, from retail, finance, healthcare. And then it was a mix of small and large enterprises. So 500 to 5,000, 5,000 or more. We broke it out that way. So first thing I want to talk about a little bit is general purpose generative AI. So 94% of the people in this survey said that their IT organizations are using it today. Now, note that that's not a representation of the entire world of IT organizations, because these people had to qualify by telling us that there was like at least some plans to deploy generative AI in the future, like they're testing it. But so like if I would estimate that if you were to just survey the entire universe without asking those qualifying questions, that this number might drop by like 10%. It'd be 84% of IT organizations in general have people using general purpose AI. The top use cases. So the big one was creating documentation or procedures or knowledge base, like content. That's what general purpose generative AI is very good at, is like generating content. They've scraped every single IT vendor's website. They've scraped Reddit, Stack Overflow, all kinds of stuff, and they have the ability to give you technical content. You are going to want to review it for quality, but like you can ask it like, hey, can you document a process for me? Can you document a policy for me? Can you come up with some procedures on how to do this or that? And they'll generate a lot of content that might be pretty good, not great. And then you have saved yourself a couple hours because you spend most of your time polishing and adding and subtracting to it. And that can be really good, because I think a lot of IT organizations struggle to maintain or create and maintain that kind of stuff. And this kind of fills a gap. And then it was quite popular to do some operational data analysis in, some people dropping some telemetry from their infrastructure and asking for some interpretation. I haven't tried it myself, but that's something that people are doing. Then you see step-by-step guidance for tasks, which is kind of related to creating documentation piece, but it's more on the fly. Like, hey, how do I do this? How do I change a configuration on this device to do this? And that can, that can be pretty helpful as long as you know enough not to like do something really wrong-headed by like implementing a hallucination of some kind. And then research and learning, like these tools have kind of replaced internet search engines to some extent, because I would say the internet search is garbage these days, no matter what. No matter whether you're using Google or something else, like the results you get on, especially technical content, is generally garbage. And so a lot of people are either going to Reddit and asking a question, or they're going to ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot and saying, hey, tell me what this stuff is. I keep hearing about it. I don't know what it is. So tell me what it is. And so you can research like new technology through ChatGPT. You see a lot of people are also creating code or scripts, as that infrastructure engineering director I talked to and quoted earlier. This was something he was doing a year and a half ago. Creating software scripts, again, vetting it for quality. You got to do that. And then the least popular thing is just general configuration generation, writing configs for switches or what have you. And that's much less popular than I thought it would be. But it makes a lot of sense that people are really focused on generating content that's not going into a device, as opposed to content that is going into a device. Safer that way. We asked them about content quality. How would you rate the quality of content and insights that consumer generative AI tools create for IT management purposes? And you see, no one rated it as bad. So that's why you see only 3 slices on here. The somewhat bad, very bad were 0%. What we really see here is 49% saying it's very good, unqualified, good, very good, could be better. And then you see almost 46% who are like kind of lukewarm on the results. It's good, but it could be better. Like, I know that there are problems with it, but it's serving a purpose. And then 5% who are neutral. Those are probably people who, well, everyone in this question, everyone answered this question whether their organization was using it or not. So note earlier, we said 94%, only 94% are using generative AI, general purpose generative AI. It kind of correlates with the 5% neutrality here. 4% aren't using it, 5% are neutral on quality. There is a gap based on where you are in an organization. Subject matter experts like network engineers, security architects, project managers, they were not as enthusiastic about content quality as people who identified themselves as supervisors or directors or VPs or CIOs or CTOs or CISOs. So it seems like the closer you are to the technology, the more you work day to day within the technology as opposed to managing people, the less enthusiastic you are about the quality of the output from general purpose AI. So that points to a couple things. One, like technical people who are much more aware of whether or not technical output is good, are less impressed, but also they're more likely to be focused on technical stuff, whereas the people further up the chain in management are less likely to be like trying to generate configurations or scripts. They're more likely to be focused on like doing research on new technology or producing non-technical content, like actual pros that would be used to educate themselves or others. So there's a couple reasons why there might be that gap. The first one is much more problematic. Like if people who are much less likely to be like in the command line interface of a device on a daily basis, like a manager, are overconfident in the quality of the content coming out of general purpose AI, they might break something because they don't know better, because they're overconfident in what the tool can do. So that's something to keep an eye on. All right, so we're going to shift focus briefly on generative AI offered by IT vendors, which is increasingly ubiquitous, although not universal. Here you see the adoption rate's a little lower among these people. 73% said that they are using generative AI provided by their IT vendors, whether it's like an infrastructure vendor, like a server vendor, or a security vendor, like a firewall vendor, or a SASE vendor, or switching and routing vendor, whatever, or an IT management vendor, like monitoring and observability, automation, what have you, IT ticketing, whatever. It's rarer. For one reason, might be because it costs money, and there's a lot of free generative AI options, and also just not as ubiquitous among all the vendors out there. Like every vendor I talk to is like working on something. Some of them like rushed out to market with stuff that was, of questionable quality from, depending on which vendor you're looking at. Others have been more deliberative and sort of slowly coming to market because they don't want to, bring a tool out that, fails to deliver on what's promised. So part of this might be that as well. That might be one of the reasons why it's lower than general purpose AI. In terms of use cases for AI you might get from your vendor as opposed to a consumer tool, number one use case for them, well, there's two that are kind of tied actually. But first, there's querying IT systems. So being able to say, hey, what's going on with my New York office? Are there any applications I need to troubleshoot? Has there been any change in utilization across my wide area network? Things like that. Like it can present stuff. It can summarize what you might otherwise look at in a dashboard that not everyone can read easily, depending on their skill level. Also, recommended actions very important. Like what should I do based on this alert? Or, you've told me that this is happening. What do you recommend that I do? So that's really powerful stuff if it's well implemented. Then slightly less common, but also kind of one of the first low-hanging fruit we saw coming to market, just being able to query product documentation and validated designs and stuff like that. How do I configure this device from vendor A? How do I make a change on to this policy on my firewall from vendor B? That can be quite powerful because now you can have a conversation with your vendor's product documentation instead of like scrolling through it or doing like a keyword search through a PDF. It can be more powerful because not only do you find the information you need more quickly, but it's actually summarized in a way that might be more easily digested. And then you see more than half of them are also using this vendor stuff to push automated actions like create a VLAN, or isolate this workstation that is showing signs of compromise, things like that. So lots of powerful stuff when IT vendors come to market with a generative AI capability. Content quality was rated a little lower here. I think it was like 49% said it was very good for general purpose. Here it's 47%. It's not a huge difference, but just a tiny tad lower. A few more neutral here, probably because only 74% of them said they're actually using something. Like, so clearly a lot of them evaluated what their vendors are offering, even if they aren't using them and are, so there's not a high number that are neutral. And then again, just like we saw with general purpose AI, there's a gap between the subject matter experts, the technical personnel in the IT organization, and the managers and executives. So it's just the same things happening here. There's more pessimism among the engineers, the architects, the admins, and there's more optimism among people at the top of the food chain. And I've already said it could be a couple reasons for that. One is, like just they're doing different things with it, but also people who are more closely working with the technology have a more critical eye of what the AI is doing, right? They may also just be cynical because they don't want to embrace it, because some of them think it's putting them out of jobs, So what's the actual impact of generative AI, regardless of whether it's a general purpose solution that's used by consumers or if it's something that your vendors bring into market? 96% of the people we surveyed told us that they think that generative AI can make their people, their IT personnel, more productive. There was some difference in how enthusiastic they were about that, but 96% of them were at least somewhat convinced. Again, there is a gap depending on who you are. The people who told us that they worked in an IT executive suite or IT service management, which is one discipline in IT that has been using AI longer than others, like that's AI ops capabilities have been a staple in ITSM space longer than it has been in some other domains. So they're more familiar with AI in general, not necessarily generative AI. But so IT executive suites and IT service management, they were more enthusiastic about the potential to boost productivity, whereas some of the other silos like NetOps, network engineering, IT architecture, and data center operations were a little more pessimistic. They were, very few of them were likely to say that they don't believe this is possible. They just were less likely to say it's like a big, big opportunity. And then 98% believe that generative AI is at least somewhat helpful for summarizing insights from IT dashboards and reports. We already talked about how that's like the number one use case, like querying IT systems through a conversational interface is the most popular use case. And so, but 98% see that potential to be like, hey, which users are having a bad experience? Describe utilization trends and my internet bandwidth. And how are these alerts related? Can you connect the dots for me? Things like that are really powerful and are one of the reasons why so many people think that IT productivity is an opportunity here. We also asked survey participants to tell us what they think the chief benefits are of applying this AI to IT management. And the big ones are optimized IT service performance and improved IT business alignment. Those are really attractive things to people who control budget. And so those are the big ones. And then proactive problem prevention and accelerated technology implementation and reduced security risk. Also, those are the big secondary ones. You see the one that is the lowest opportunity, the one that they see the least potential in, mitigation of skills gaps or personnel shortages. Like they don't think that generative AI, it's not very common for them to expect that generative AI is going to replace empty seats, or fill empty seats. So we don't see this as, like, I don't see this as something that's going to be like, oh, we don't need to hire someone, we can just have AI do it. That's not what's really going to be the trend here. Like it's about boosting productivity of the people you have as opposed to replacing them or avoiding hiring during it when there's attrition. On the flip side, like I'm always talking to network people, network engineers who tell me their CIOs are like really banging the drum on, no new headcount, no new headcount. So there is that pressure already there, but this is not going to be something that allows those CIOs to bang that drum louder. We asked them what kinds of challenges they perceive with this whole phenomenon, and the big one is data quality. Not data quality, evaluation of the quality of outputs. Being able to understand whether the AI tool is correct. So that means that this is one of the other reasons why I don't think that skills gap mitigation is a big opportunity for this, because you need people who know how to look at something and say, yeah, that's right, or no, I'm going to double check that. The ability, the whole process of evaluating the quality of AI outputs, whether it's coming from consumer general purpose tools or from your IT vendors, is rough. Maybe you can have a little more faith in your vendors to deliver something good, but you can't have any faith in like the consumer stuff. I just saw something last night. A friend of, because I used to be in the newspaper world, and I'm in a group chat with a bunch of former newspaper reporters, and one of them texted me the link to a new website that just popped up in my region of Massachusetts, and its complete purpose is it's a generative AI technology that I don't know how they built it. They probably just like, well, anyway, what it does is it scrapes transcripts from government meetings, like boards and committees and commissions that municipal governments post on their websites, and it writes a newspaper story about it, as if it was like a reporter writing a newspaper story. And so you can like enter your town that you're interested in following in, and it's going to tell you all the latest news from all your government meetings. But it says right on the website, the content that this service produces is prone to hallucination. Please report any hallucinations that you detect to this website email. So like you can't even have faith in the news, let alone faith in whether the technical content and insights and automations that you're trying to drive through generative AI is good quality. So you need people that are smart enough to evaluate high risk decisions that would be driven by this stuff before you allow people to break something. And then data quality is a big secondary one. Training data, prompt data. They want to. They see this some issues with what how what data have you trained your solution on that you want me to buy, and do we have a good system in place for me to feed my data to your tool, so it's actually getting an accurate picture of my environment. And do I need to train people to write prompts correctly, so they don't screw things up by getting even worse information than they could have gotten with a better prompt. And then you see also integrating AI into tools and processes. So they might be trying to do some integrations between like a standalone AI tool and an IT system. They also might be trying to integrate their vendors' generative AI capability with other vendors in their environment. I know some vendors have started coming to market with AI solutions that can pull third-party data and integrate insights into the insights they get from their own the data that they own with their systems. And processes, just like integrating day-to-day, people are used to doing things manually, or looking at dashboards, reports, maps, convincing them to integrate an AI query into their day-to-day processes might be a heavy lift, which actually feeds into one of the tertiary ones that is less of an issue, which is user acceptance. And you see cost is at the bottom of the list. However, it goes up among people who are kind of soft on the quality of the content that their IT vendors provide. So basically what that tells me is if they have a vendor who sold them a bill of goods on a generative AI tool, it doesn't work very well, they're going to say that cost is an issue because they spend money on something that's not working. There are security and compliance concerns. In terms of risk perception, 63% are at least somewhat concerned about using general purpose generative AI tools. So they see some security risk with that. That's a majority, a big majority. And then a smaller majority see some risk with using the tools that their IT vendors are providing. In terms of what concerns they perceive, the number one issue is data leakage via prompts. Like, don't put customer data, don't put IP, don't put sensitive information into the queries. Please don't do it. And then a lot of them also perceive the potential for like malicious code or filters that malicious code that AI generates. That's supposed to be files, not filters. That's a typo. I don't know how common that is, but I mean, I was just reading a story the other day that like somebody came up with a hack of Slack's AI tool to trick it into phishing sensitive data from other users in Slack, like basically like being in a public channel and like phishing people who are in a private channel, and that is malicious information that's being injected into your environment. By the way, Slack says they fixed that issue or was working on it. I can't remember. I saw it in the register. 43% say that they're worried about overconfidence and AI-driven security. So that's, yeah. Don't be, I don't know if anyone is really overconfident in security these days because of just, I think my social security number has been leaked at least 30 times at this point. But yeah, they're worried about that. And then compliance violations and then just bad changes that create vulnerabilities, which is kind of related to malicious code and filters. But like, hey, how do I do this? Oh, this is how you do it. Okay, I'm doing it that way. Oops, nope. I just broke my network and now everyone's penetrated the perimeter. Great. Anyway, key takeaways. Consumer AI provides knowledge, remedial instruction, and some basic coding config generation. These are all good things as long as you're careful with how you use that information and content. IT vendor solutions can streamline data analysis and guide and automate action. And early adopters told us that they're seeing improved service performance and better alignment of IT with the business. And those are things that the CIO loves to hear, and the CEO. And then users are struggling with evaluating AI solutions, especially the quality of the content that comes out of them. And they're worried about security and compliance risk. Like the majority of them see some risk there. So those are things to keep in mind as we move forward, because this stuff isn't going away anytime soon. The report's been published. You can get it at this link. There will be a price tag associated with it. Or you can get a free version from NetScout if you go to their website. They have I don't know if they posted it yet, but they have an abridged version of it that's probably for free. I can't imagine they're charging for it. I think that's a violation of our agreement with them. Yeah, so check that out. There's a lot more data and analysis in that. Yeah, that's it. I'll turn it over to Raleigh for Q&A.
Thank you, Shamus. As I mentioned at the start of the webinar, I will be sending out an email later today that will include the on-demand playback and a link to the report on the EMA site. But as Shamus mentioned, I do invite you to check out NetScout's site too. Shamus, let's go ahead and jump into the questions. The first one is, can you clarify how AI helps with improved IT business alignment?
Okay, so I imagine a few ways this can happen. One, people in IT who don't necessarily understand the business can ask generative AI to help them understand it. It sounds silly, but true. Also, people on the business side who are like researching how IT could help them better by asking like ChatGPT, like, hey, what's this and how could it help? Why would it be better, good for my business? Can then go to the people in IT and be like, hey, are we using this? Can we use this? It it's kind of like a knowledge enhancer. It makes people on both sides of the divide better understand each other because they can sort of train themselves on with the information. Also, if you're using something from a vendor, like people who are very technically limited can ask questions of IT systems, be like, and like IT can provide that to him, be like, hey, you don't have to use this, but if you want to, you can like ask this why you're having trouble connecting to the Wi-Fi network. And then and then you can call us and chances are we're already working on it, but like you can like be articulate in your complaint or be like, hey, like when's this going to be fixed? I know it's happening. When is it going to be fixed? It's sort of like it helps enable conversations and align future plans and things like that.
Thanks, Shamus. During your presentation, you talked about the AI-generated newsletter summarizing local, county, and government meetings. Can you name that tool or site, please?
Let me look in my text chain. Let's see here. It's called it's called it it's southshore.news. One word, southshore.news, because it's covering a specific region of Massachusetts.
Thanks for
Yeah.
checking that, Shamus.
Yep.
The next question is, are IT orgs actually spending money on general purpose AI?
Yes. 74% told us that their IT departments are paying for premium subscriptions. This point of view tended to come from management, not rank and file technical personnel. So those people like technical personnel, subject matter experts were less likely to say yes to that. Also, people who reported having premium subscriptions paid for by IT also felt better about content quality. That's worth noting. Like, so 3/4 are paying for it among this group of people that are much more likely to be using generative AI in general. And the big headline there is if you are paying for it as opposed to using free ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or whatever, Gemini, if you're paying for it, you're more confident in the quality of the output.
Thanks. Let's take one final question. Are IT organizations setting any policies around how their own people use consumer AI?
Yes. 82% said that they have some kind of policy in place. It should be 100% in my opinion, but only 82% said they had something like that. Note, this is, yes, policies about how IT people in general use it. Not, I mean, maybe it's 100% for company wide. I don't know, but for IT personnel in particular, it's 82%. Usually, it takes the form of like restricting which consumer tools you can use. And they're also setting policies about what kind of information you can enter into a prompt. Those are the two big things that they're two big steps they're taking. A smaller number are also asking IT personnel to make it clear when content was created by AI when they share it. So like if you're creating something and share it, you have to tell everyone else that it was created by AI, not you, because that makes other people more cognizant of like vetting it and making sure it's actually good information or whatever. So they feel that's important too.
Great insights. Thanks, Shamus. And thanks to our audience for taking time out of your schedule to join us. Be on the lookout for that email from EMA, and I hope we'll see you at a future EMA research webinar. Thanks again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.